My name's Simon Monk, and I run a company called Demand Finder. Just to put myself in context, so you understand kind of a bit more about me. I once, back in about 1999, wrote a research paper, a paper at university called Information Across Your Influence. At the time I was studying engineering, doing a master's, and I thought, let's focus on the data side of the supply chain. And I did that with a national company to make beds. And I didn't really realise what I was stepping into at that point. And the university said, you know, do you want to do a research paper on this? And I was like, no, I'll sell you a few applications instead. So that was my first little business, and sold them a few bits and pieces and went on from there into telecoms. I then set up an Internet of Things business back in 2003, connecting vending machines to the internet. And you may have seen the Walls, ice cream, Ben & Jerry's machines, airports. That would have had my kit in, sending back information and essentially offering a retail solution to those companies. I then worked with an IBM business partner for 10 years, EBI Solutions, and that gave me enterprise experience selling into kind of the large enterprise space, information management, analytics, predictive modelling, that type of thing. Really interesting space, and I've now set up Demand Finder, and the reason for that is because I think things are becoming more commoditized and actually more in reach to the small guy, and we can start to take some of that technology and push it into the marketplace where maybe traditionally they wouldn't have been able to afford the technology. So start small, plan big is the message here, and it's about looking at Honest Café. I do this bit, don't I? So Honest Café, they're an unmanned cafe chain. In other words, they're vending machines. But what Tim's done here is he's actually created a cafe environment. And they are a really good example of how a small company with a very lean startup mentality can actually harness some of the technology that their competitors are using for the likes of the high street coffee culture brands that we all know. And so Tim here says, we now have access to insights, understanding, and the ability to plan ahead with more confidence. Tim is an absolute skeptic and didn't believe a word that I said when I first met him. And now is quite happy with how things have gone. A bit about Demand Finder. I won't ask you to put your hands up and see if you know us, because the likelihood is you won't. But basically, we're a sales and marketing process and systems management consultancy. We help people who are grooming their business ahead of a planned exit. We help investors who are looking to invest in companies. Is the sales pipeline reliable? Do they have the right systems and processes? And in many ways, are they using their data effectively, and is there an opportunity? We help startups become more investable, but we also help mainstream businesses look at technology roadmaps to do with sales and marketing and to do with some of this technology and how you can actually operationalize it into your business. And I think the presentations we've had today demonstrate just how effective that is. We're also a Salesforce implementation partner. So we provide competitive advantage when buying or selling or running ambitious or distressed companies. And on that note, I've turned around 2 businesses, and I'm a member of the Institute for Turnaround, and that's hence the distressed side. Distressed businesses are a great place to be. People make decisions pretty quickly. So building business value. Big data is fast becoming a competitive advantage. I think we all can appreciate that. For the smaller businesses where the revenues are not billions, they may be a few million, they might not even be that. Where did they start on this journey? How do they actually know how to put together a business plan? So I'll go into that in a bit more detail. And our approach is to help them through that and indeed deliver some of the services on the back of it. Honest Café is a startup. It's a lean startup. They deliver healthy alternative products through their vending machines, but they build a social environment. They support local suppliers, they use recycled materials, and they create a third place for people that's around the clock, that doesn't involve the normal resource you'd see in a coffee shop. And they are technically, or were, technically ill-equipped. So you asked them about customer insight, and they weren't really in a position to tell me very much, certainly. Mark, their head of product development, said it's tough observing what our customers are saying and doing in our cafes. You've got to remember, these customers are behind a machine. They don't actually know who these customers are at all. They couldn't have the ability to find out even if they tried, unlike necessarily online. So we don't know what our customers are into, what they look like, and as a startup, it's crucial that we know what sells and what we should be focused on. And I think therein lies the problem, that it's almost like they're selling through a wholesaler. These machines are not very user-friendly. They don't tell you the secrets and the things that go on around them. You've got to work it out yourself, but what they do give you is very structured transactional data, and that's at least a start, and there's a lot of information in that. So, Honest Café were keen to do something. If you look at expectations, this is from a Gartner report, traditionally IT have been responsible for kind of going about this, and they don't have an IT department. So they had no one to prepare their data, start curating reports and pushing that out. That didn't exist. But what they did know was that there's a wider variety of data. They themselves knew they wanted to do something. And they wanted to maybe start small. They didn't have the budgets to go around it with a big budget. But also, as this report says, the timeliness of data is becoming more important. It's no good finding insights if actually it's old by the time they get to use it. They needed a way to get that data and then say, okay, that operator's going out with a van. What are we going to do differently about that? This is an interesting one. It's from IBM. So this is talking about Generation D. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find the report. And it basically says, what are the characteristics of companies who do well at using their data? These are, what does a data-rich, analytically driven organization look like? And I tried to plot Honest Café on there, and they were just about on there. I'll show you on the next slide. But what is interesting is the companies that are data-rich and analytically driven, they're 3 times more likely to excel at developing insights about their customers and markets. Well, that's exactly what Honest Café needed if they were going to start to roll out a coffee chain. They're also twice as likely to automate processes and decisions. Now, a demand finder, that is absolutely what we're about in terms of adding value. It's about not only finding insights. Everyone in here can find insights. Some of you have done it brilliantly, some of you are still on the journey, but we know how to do it, or at least we know we can do it. How do you turn that into something your business actually operate with? How do you get that into the guy who doesn't like computers, who's in the factory floor or driving the van? How do you make their life different today based on that insight? And companies who are good at this are twice as likely to be able to do that, which I think is a phenomenal statistic. They're also twice as likely to use cloud computing, so they can pick up and drop projects pretty quickly, and they're twice as likely to engage through digital platforms, which is not that much of a surprise, possibly. But Honest Café, I'd say, are probably down there. They had some transactional data, and they certainly had an aspiration to do more with it, but they didn't know where to start. So they were stuck thinking, basically, to use their expressions, I hate Excel, let alone whatever else you're going to put in front of me. I just don't like data. I like making coffees in our factory with old pallets we rip apart and bang together and then selling coffee through it. There's a massive void there. And a lot of the presentations I've seen today, they wouldn't even understand. These are people who run businesses at a very, very practical level. So they did have some transactional data, but they didn't know where to start. And as Mark said, we lacked an effective way to analyze it. They knew they were sitting on something. They just didn't know how to go about changing that. So taking a pretty simple approach, and there are lots of ways to skin a cat. But anyway, this is one. So the first thing to do, and this is basically our approach to saying, it doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, what's your budget, what's your tool set, what's your skills, you're starting from somewhere. Where do you start? How do you get that conversation going within your business? So what's the benefit you're trying to actually capture? Have a good understanding of your use case. Have a good understanding of who needs to be brought into this process. You might throw it away, you might keep it, it might find you something, but make sure you've got the buy-in throughout that process. From a data preparation point of view, there's a webinar on Bright Talk we did prior to this event. I go into that in a bit more detail. But look around you. What data do you really have? It's probably more than you think, and you're probably actually able to get data from the transactional logs you've already got in-house before you start to explore all this other unstructured data that's out there. Just start small. Start with some of the data you've already got. What peoples and skills do you need? I'll come on to that, and also data architecture, and then that will influence what scale you need to get to. Is this throwaway, or is it something you're going to keep? That'll dictate your technology, your adoption strategy. And then you can start to go through the exploration, discovery, and insight. So again, what tools do you need? How do you go about it? Is it Hadoop for landing and exploring data? Or actually, can that be something that you do within a more democratized tool set like Watson Analytics, for example? And then the real clincher, I think, and it's the bit that so often is missed by technology-based people, is how do you embed this back into your business? And for that, you need to have a good business mind to understand how do you actually turn this into a business process that's going to add value, not just a data scientist trophy winner. So I'll just walk through a few of these bits. From a use case perspective, Honest Café is really the use case is merchandising. So developing store merchandise assortments most appropriate and relevant to the buying needs, preferences, and shopping patterns of the customer. Remembering the customer is somebody they don't know behind a vending machine. So how do you make that choice to say what should we put in that machine to optimize it? Because if we make a few percentage changes on that one machine, it might not sound very much, but the thing about those machines are they're everywhere, huge volume of them. They're actually per square foot more profitable than pretty much any other retail space, physical space. So we only need to make a small change to make a really big difference. So we need to increase inventory turns, average transaction size, margins, and customer loyalty. So that was the use case that they said, let's use this, let's go about using our data to improve that. From a data perspective, some data is internal, some's external, some structured, some is unstructured. And so just listed a few examples. I'm sure you've got your own thoughts around this and experiences, but they had some loyalty card data. Their vending machines had card readers that could actually have a loyalty option should they wish to use it. I've put sensor data on there. Essentially, the machine is a series of sensors to work out the transactions. They then look at the planograms to understand what's in there and so forth. They had some demographics data where within the machines they had universities, hospitals, leisure centres, commercial sites. What was the socio-economic of that area? Information like that could be available should they choose to go and get it. Social data, they ended up looking at some Twitter data, and they also looked at some weather data. If I'd have asked them day one what they had, they'd have said, well, we know what we sold, full stop. And we didn't buy any of this data. This was just readily available. This is just data that was available to them. And I talked before about democratizing tool sets. There are tools that you can go to with a click of a button and put some of your social data in context in a structured way against the graphs and the data sets you've already got. So that's really what the enabler is. They could get this data very quickly and make use of it. So from a peoples and skills point of view, they said, oh yeah, but we don't have the dedicated people on this, and the data is sometimes hard to pull together and form a picture. Well, actually, behind the scenes and off the record, they were really saying, we just don't know where to start here. We really don't know where to start. And so, okay, let's start with what you have got. Don't force yourself to be something you're not. What can you do well, and let's start there. And they did have business users with an incredibly strong understanding of their marketplace and the business that they were running. They didn't have business analysts who were skilled in reporting with a favoured technology, i.e. a BI department, and they certainly didn't have data scientists who could freely go and explore with some of the big data opportunities you guys would probably recognise. But they did have people who knew their business. And so it was a great place to start in terms of collecting some basic data, putting it into a tool set, and starting to run predictive models that could say, show me the things that influence each other the most. And that's where we started. What is it that's influencing elements of my data the most? And that started to unfold and tell a story. From a data and architecture point of view, they actually use Watson Analytics. It's an IBM product, but I'm not here to push that whatsoever. I would just say, I think the trend will be democratizing products is definitely what we're going to see. I also would say that tools like that aren't actually solutions. They're no different to Excel. It's an empty box. It depends what you put in it and how you go about using it. And I think we'll see more tools that come with data ready in them, because that's really where the value comes from. These people don't even if you give them a really great tool, they've still got to put data in it, and they still get nervous about it. So really it was a data discovery exercise. Along the way, what they didn't realise was some of their data was actually being landed and explored. Some of the Twitter data was being structured for them. Some of the weather data the same. Advanced analytics, they were actually having predictive models running in the background. They didn't realise that, but they were able to drag and drop and say, what's affecting my revenue? Now, other end of the spectrum, a large enterprise will start with the data scientist saying, I've got some Hadoop, I'm going to do some landing exploration and pick out what I need, get rid of 90% of it, move it into an advanced analytics environment. So depending on where you are, the skill sets you've got, you can start potentially in a different place, but it's not to say you can't start just because you're small. So using the predictive, what they actually found was, it's quite interesting, they identified that people who buy as a social experience have different reasons than those who dash in and grab just one drink. They also have different payment methods, time of day, differs the day of week. Knowing this, they can correctly time promotions. So these guys go to sites. They stand and promote products at different times of the week, times of the day, different sites, do on-site promotions. By knowing the fact that actually behind this box, they were actually seeing social patterns appear. So they could start to understand when did social gatherings happen, where there were more cross-sell, more cross-sell opportunities, and where they could actually drive higher margins. And they were able to find that out just by looking at the data they already had. They also started to look at weather data, and they realised that cappuccinos is a pretty safe bet, doesn't matter what the weather is, but lattes you're not going to sell a great deal of in hot weather, and a whole load of stuff behind that as well. The weather data, it's no surprise for convenience purchasing, does play a big role, but that then means you can start to take that information and say, where should I, I've got a couple of problems in my field, where do I go first? But if you happen to know that that site's really affected by weather, and that one not so much, you can start to play around with where do you send your engineers, where do you send your service resources. So weather data can help us make sure we offer the right customers the right thing, possibly their favourite drink. Then looking at social, I think social's a long way to go, but they are able to start to enrich their understanding of their marketplace. They reference things both about their customers, but actually about are they seeing lots of chats about the British Bake Off, and then some oatmeal products go through the roof, and they're starting to recognise that that has some value. I think our point is embed this data. Get out there, do some iterations, however small you are, and then embed it back in. Look at your sales process. What does all this information tell you about how people want to buy? What do they need to know about you for you to then change your sales process through the CRM systems you've got? Change your lead scoring, change how you score opportunities, change how you pay your sales resource. Take this outside of vending. Take this same iterative, very available approach, and then bring that learning back into your operational systems. From a marketing point of view, it's already been mentioned, but segmentation, everything we're talking about here helps us better segment our marketplace, which means we can drive different campaigns, choose different data sets to use, and then look at how we can automate that. Again, even at a very small scale, even if you're turning over a million, not a billion. So bringing insight into our decision-making process makes all the difference. So in summary, expectations and data sources are changing. Embedding insight into the decision-making process locks in business value. That goes back to my original point about demand finder, helping people plan exits or investing. It's a huge amount of business value you can lock in. We're seeing ambitious companies are doing exactly that. So we recommend look at your sales and marketing technology roadmaps and make sure you are iterating with these small projects, and then for the good ones, feeding into your operational environment. Most of all, start small. Doesn't matter how small your organisation is. Start small, but plan big. Make sure you know where it's going and what choices you're able to. Thank you very much.